Well, first of all, everybody, so glad that you could be here this morning. Good morning. Welcome to Learn from the Experts, serial number 001. This is a cross-industry expert network that gives each of you a 30-minute dose of real-time, hard-to-get business intelligence from an expert and, of course, connects you to professionals, expanding your networks. So everybody invited on this call is an expert in what they do within their networks, and that's why you've been invited. If all goes well, new ideas and curiosity are sparked, and you may have helped the other guys solve a problem or reach an opportunity faster, and that's why we're here. So here's how it works. Basically, two components. We have the SME or subject matter expert spotlight, about 15 minutes with Q&A, and today it's John Lewis. And then we have a group leads and needs session, and that's about 10 minutes. And again, that's like it sounds, networking, trying to help the other person get to their opportunity a little bit faster. That's how it works. So some housekeeping notes. This is a video call, and so if you're not comfortable with having the video on, that's okay. You can turn it off. I know what each of you looks like. Use the feature that allows you to toggle the chat from private. If all of you use this, you know there's a chat feature. You can privately chat each other or the group. Use your mute button when you're not speaking, please. And by lunchtime today, you'll actually have a list of all the participants and their contact information, so you can carry on with your own conversations and the business that makes sense for you. So with that, it's really my privilege to introduce today's expert and my really good friend, John Lewis. So with almost 30 years in aerospace, Lewis's impressive career, 10 years with Lockheed Martin and 20 with NASA. Some of his roles included test director, subsystem manager, hardware manager, deputy system manager, and currently serves as the environmental control and life support system manager for NASA's Orion spacecraft. John's worked on the Space Shuttle, International Space Station, and now, of course, on the Orion spacecraft. He's one of NASA's ace problem solvers he's called on to serve and to handle some of the most difficult situations. Not to mention, he's a hell of a storyteller. So when you get the chance to talk to him, ask him time on the Lunar Mars life support test where he spent 90 days in the chamber with some other people that became his friends real fast. So John, so glad you could join us and share this problem that you have. Could you now just tell us a little bit more about it? I'm going to turn it over where everybody now, I guess, can see the screen, and you can take it from here.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot, John. So kind of a quick 5-minute version of what we wrestle with. This is a problem that, spaceflight has dealt with since we started. We look at designing a spacecraft, and unless you're recycling, which we do in other cases, you really worry about getting the most out of the consumables you have, because if not, you have no other way of getting it. So just kind of a general rundown of what drives Orion. Orion is NASA's next deep space exploration vehicle. It'll be a capsule similar to Apollo, but it'll be capable of bringing us back to the moon, and also serving as a transport to and from, like a Mars transit vehicle in the future. So big conical shaped re-entry vehicle, because when you come in that fast, you need something like that, and some we've been working on. Key designs drivers on Orion is it's got to be able to support a crew of 4 for 21 days. And that includes contingencies. So if something breaks, we still got to get them home 21 days. I mean, the whole mission is 21 days. We also have a requirement of keeping on orbit the vehicle on over 210 days. So if I dock to a station or something like that. Also, the way the ground processing works, we're building up the vehicles across the country, and then final assemblies at the Cape in Florida. We have about 240 days of ground processing time, worst case. And again, all these are worst case numbers. My missions will probably fall within that. But as I've learned working past programs, you always find a way using all the margin you have. The other thing we have is if we have a failure, so something breaks, I lose a water tank, I lose a gas regulator, anything, even get a hole in the cabin, I've got to be able to keep the crew alive for 6 days. So I've got to think about that in my consumable storage. The other thing, just general numbers to talk about, and I apologize for using SAE numbers and not metric. It's just the way my mind is wired for the most part. Our consumables is about 2 pounds of oxygen per day per crew, about 2.5 liters or 5.5 pounds of water. We also have to worry about, from a leakage standpoint, I've got ammonia, I've got hydrazine, which is a rocket fuel that are pretty stinky bad stuff. And so I've got to keep those away from the crew. And then my tanks are sized for a 1/4 pound of leakage, so I've got to handle that leakage. In past and historically, aerospace, we've always used helium to do leak checks because it's a pretty straightforward system where you put helium on one side and you draw a vacuum with a mass spec. And so all of our components have been sized to handle, the leakages in the 10⁻⁴ cc's per second of helium for our consumable gas loss for water and coolant, because we've done some math and some tests to show that 10⁻⁴ to 10⁻⁵ is a liquid leakage, and we don't want to have any liquid leakage because you have that in space, you freeze things up, make big ice balls, and break things. And then the cabin air, depending on if it's dynamic or static seals, anywhere from 10⁻³ to 10⁻⁶ cc's of helium. Challenges we have with one is just keeping components to maintain these leak rates. If you can look, the cross section on the right is one of our classical regulators, and I've got to worry about this thing dealing with 4,000 psi oxygen and not catching fire. At the same time, I've got to be able to design it to where it's at the 10⁻⁴, 10⁻⁵ leak rate. I also have to design it to where I in some cases have dual seals because I have to have a fault tolerance of a single seal failing. And so all those things kind of add up to make a challenging design. Challenges we have with using helium in past has been that helium permeates the seals and shows up as a leak. And so, if you pressurize with helium long enough, that helium will eventually work through, even though you don't have a leak. And so you've got to track that down. Nitrogen is some companies are preferring to use nitrogen for leak checks, except the leak rates are about the same, but at these rates, you've got to wait, hours, if not days, to show that volumetric accumulation, so you get that burst of gas. And then fluid leaks are masked by evaporation, right? And so anything I have out in the air leaks out. And I also got to prove these leaks happen at the broad temperature range, maximum operating pressure, and also launch vibration, right? And so I've got to have test rigs up to do these leak checks at these environments, which makes the testing even more challenging. And so just looking for other folks' experience with what they've done leak testing wise, and what their experience has been to get these type of leak rates.
Thanks, John. So with that, we'll open the floor to any questions or comments. And do us a favor whenever you come forward, make sure and unmute yourself and let everybody know who it is.
Let us see your lips moving.
So you
Hey, John. This is Daryl. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. In the middle there where you show the component leak requirements, are you also looking at the concentration of helium? So higher concentrations versus the percentage or the detection level?
So what we normally do is we pressurize one side of the component with 100% helium, pure helium, and we we, with a vacuum pump on the other side hooked up to a mass spec, look for a concentration of helium that we basically can convert over to standard cc's per second of helium flow rate. So it is a standard process. So we're just looking, in the vacuum, counting molecules of helium that pass through and then convert that to an SCCS.
Okay. John, I don't know how far we want to, I know we're limited on time. I could share some details of what we do. I'm kind of holding back a little bit, make sure this is the right.
Well, what I'd say, DJ, is maybe you give them a teaser and then you guys take it from there separately.
Okay. So I work for Dow Chemical. I actually used to work for Lockheed on Orion as a structures CPE before I started with Dow. But since I've been with Dow, I work a lot of the troubleshooter across the globe for all our different businesses. We do helium testing, and we use it both to troubleshoot and to validate. We also we have specific system design parameters to eliminate the potential for a leak. We have lethal service products we produce on a ppm level that would cause a fatality. So there's some unique things we do from a design perspective to eliminate the potential or make it detectable. So we can share some things with, we got a standard, a spec on how we leak test with helium, and it's around the operational parameters to kind of validate the system as it's going to be used. And then we also have some unique design things we've done.
Okay. Yeah, no, that would be good to share. Yeah, absolutely.
Other questions, comments?
I can always answer the obligatory "how you go in space" question that I get from elementary kids, or we can save that for a later session.
Actually, the simplest question, this John Gibson, is how did you come up with the design criteria of 6 days of failure and the number of orbit days? Is that a price consideration, or is that just mission design?
As a mission design, primarily, Apollo had a 3-day return, and it was based on if something happened while in lunar orbit, it would take your secondary engines this long to get you home. And Orion early on, different than Apollo, we're going to be changing the orbit around the moon to where we're not equatorial. We're actually coming out like this, and then we got to kick our orbit around to get to the poles. And so that takes a couple more days to get that back. That was the spec that set it out. And then we kind of hung everything around that, be it the toilet breaks or I have a hole in the cabin. And actually I've got a hole in the cabin is a big challenge because it's just keeping people alive in spacesuits for 6 days, which is extremely challenging.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Hey, John, this is Dave from Air Liquide. I guess I'll ask maybe some more simple questions. My experience is in spacesuits, working 31 years at ILC Dover. So I'm dreadfully familiar with the thought of living in a spacesuit for 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
The connections you're talking about are in vehicle as well as outside vehicle exposed to vacuum?
Yeah, so we have some leakages that are going into the cabin, and so I've got to worry about that from a leakage from a consumable standpoint. Am I leaking into the cabin more than I'm consuming it? I've got to worry about leakages overboard because it's just a complete loss, and then I've got to worry about an external leak of a component, which is something that's leaking from inside out, and then a through leakage for a valve standpoint. So we have a full report of where the leakage may go and how we deal with that.
Okay, sounds good, thanks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to contact back to people inside Air Liquide that
Yeah.
probably have similar experience to what Daryl was talking about, and then come back to you with some potential thoughts and solutions.
Yeah, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Maybe also it'd be worth talking about a timeline and when you need to come up with a solution.
You know, this is leak checks for us is a continuous job. As a matter of fact, we're just going through flight certification for my hardware now. We're in the middle of outbreak. And you know, a lot of it's going through its leak checks as I speak. But we're always looking for, you know, another better way of doing it. There's always a component that's going through that development phase. So this I see is almost a reaching out. You know, we always say in the middle of a crisis, you know, well, what are the other options? Well, it's kind of hard to flesh those out. But I think I see this as an opportunity of, well, building that database within the division, you know, I work in and the center, so we can build that portfolio up and share that, you know, have that background.
John, what about mitigation in case there's a leak? I know that's kind of a different topic, but is that on the table, or is it something you guys think about?
So we think about it from two standpoints. Usually our systems are welded, right, as much as we can to avoid, because, you know, weld is pretty good leak check, are dual sealed, right? And so a lot of the components have dual seals in them, especially if it's a seal of a certain size. That gives you you have to show that design with any single seal, you know, works. And the challenge there is you've got to prove the individual seals, and also you get seal permeation between the two. How do you verify both seals if it's already assembled once? Other things we do is from a consumable standpoint, I fly with a little bit more water. I fly with a fair amount more oxygen, just to protect me for if I lose a tank or lose a regulator system or something like that. I have a level of redundancy. In past programs, we've been anywhere from a single fault tolerant or a dual fault tolerant, right, where I've got to be able to handle any one or two failures and get home depending on the system. And for us, we've got to be single fault tolerant and still have the capability of getting the crew home.
A non-technical question, John.
Yeah.
Given all that's going on, are you worried about funding?
I've you know that I've always have been working with the space agency. There's never enough. As a matter of fact, Scott Dozier on the line now shared a really good chart, shows that our highest funding was in '68 and it always rolls down, independent of whoever is in the White House. And it is the challenge because we are always we're started up as the promotional wing of the U.S. government and the administration, presidential administration. And so we want to show that, hey, we're doing great things. But I think that is the push, even generally from, you know, if I want to transition from a government-funded exploration of space to commercial-funded, you know, ventures, you've got to come up with cheaper ways of doing it. But I'm just trying to figure out what things I don't do anymore to reduce my costs without killing anybody. Because I've, you know, if I get something wrong, and y'all know the cases, it just goes bad fast. And so I've got to think about how I dial that back. And so we wrestle with that on a daily basis. Is, you know, we think about what can fail that can kill somebody. Life support is just kind of the part of my vernacular. But yeah, current situation, yeah, I mean, I'm worried in general for the country, but yeah, it will be interesting to see how we get out of this.
Well, thanks, John. We're going to move on from there. And it sounds like you've got a couple follow-ons with DJ and Daryl that you can connect with. And anybody else, you know, the way it works is sometimes you're not you're not going to bring things up in this meeting, but so feel free to follow up with John later. So thanks for that. So the next session is leads and needs. And quite frankly, this is open-ended. You guys got on this phone, you got some ideas in your head, you have needs for your business. How can we help the other guy get to where they need to be faster to their opportunity? So that's really what this is about. And I wanted to ask my friend Scott Dozier. Scott, you're our guinea pig. Can you talk a little bit about this maybe and give us an example of how this might work?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me on here, John. Just to introduce you to who I am and who we are. I work with Alliance Benefit Group. We're a administrative consulting firm for retirement benefits. So we work with companies of all different sizes. I'd say our sweet spot is to work with companies that have employees of about 100 to maybe 2,500, somewhere in that range. Some of it has to do with asset sizes of plans. But our role is to basically, solve problems in terms of administrative concerns for retirement plans, obviously mostly in the U.S. So we work with 401k plans, defined benefit plans, all different types of plans. And my need is to have conversations with that, call it lower level C-suite, upper level HR management, maybe controller level, CFO, or even CPA referral folks. Those conversations, that's who I talk to most of the time. And right now, given the current environment, what we're really seeking to do is just have conversations with folks to figure out ways that we can help them navigate kind of a difficult period in terms of how do they manage their benefit. There's some new legislation that came out as a part of the CARES Act, which changes how you can manage benefits, how you can manage distributions from different types of retirement plans. So we want to help them. And as well, there's going to be probably quite a bit of after this shock to the system economically, they'll look for ways to save money, obviously. And so one of the things that we want to be able to do is go in and show them how can you manage your benefit in a way that can potentially create a savings tool as a part of your tool set that you might need to create savings and not cut jobs. And so that's really, at this point, we're just really just trying to consider talking to those folks. So my hope is to be talking to that level of individual that needs us really and needs some outside consulting. And it starts with just an easy conversation, just to understand who they are, what their structure is as a company, their structure is in terms of their benefits. How does that dovetail into other types of benefits, medical and otherwise? We don't handle those types of benefits, but we do want to help on the retirement side. So anybody that knows folks that fit that category of person, that's the type of person we want to be talking to, and we want to find out about what you need too, so that we can have a good back and forth and quid pro quo as far as what you need.
Got it. Thanks, Scott. Anybody know anybody off the top of their head that might help Scott to where he needs to go faster? Or any comments about that side of the business from your experience?
You have contacts with HR. My name is Noah Kruger. I'm a commercial real estate broker with a group called Savills here in Houston. We're a global real estate firm. But you have contacts with like HR&P or groups like that. Is that the general area where you're looking to be?
Yes, so we can have contacts with folks like HR&P. Typically, that's what we call a PEO arrangement. Specific to your industry, there's kind of there's an interesting structure where you have a lot of contract to commercial real estate brokers.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're able to actually help the commercial real estate broker on the individual side. So that's a good contact for us. They need the potential for creation of tax breaks for themselves and individually. It's not individual financial advisory. It's really more building out a benefit for them as their own entity. But in terms of what you're speaking of, yes, we definitely can reach out to folks like that. Even the payroll companies, we have a little bit of contact with to be able to dovetail with what they're doing and how we can potentially help them with the benefit.
I'm happy to talk further offline about
Sure.
that.
Sure, sounds great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? One of the things that my business, we're working on a benchmarking study for the healthcare system around their supply chain. As you might imagine, there's some challenges there, and we've looked at some research, and we're interested in meeting executives for companies like Cardinal Health, like HCA, so hospitals, also distribution networks and pharmaceuticals, and that whole supply chain, trying to find people who are interested in participating in this. So senior executives with healthcare suppliers that you might know and you would feel comfortable sending a lead on for my need for the benchmarking study on supply chain. They could also be supply chain managers as well. That's something that I'm trying to get a better understanding, and I'd like some help if we have it out there. If you do, just follow up with me later. That's fine. So we've got 2 minutes left. So if there's anybody else who's got something real quick, obviously we have the ability to reach out to each other individually.
Can we just do a quick around the horn so we understand what everybody else does?
You know, it'll have to be super quick, 1 minute or less. John Gibson, why don't you start? You're right in the middle of my screen.
Well, CEO of Flowtech. We do complex nanofluids, and for the oil field industry, we now are a large hand sanitizer company. It's just like oil field chemicals, but different. We do have a lot of connections throughout the hospital systems at this point. So I'll give you a call, John. And I was previously CEO of Halliburton. I've run several software companies and others around the horn, but I'm currently in the chemistry business.
Great. Thanks.
Yep.
What about you?
So I'm the president of Gexcon. So Gexcon, we are a engineering company where we actually look at consequences for unintentional releases. So we have an advanced 3D modeling software. We have a very large scale test site where we actually develop for leaks and then the explosion, flammability and explosion consequences from oil fields, from incidents from that, and we do a lot of incident investigation and then root cause analysis to figure out incidents as well.
So we're up against the time, so I'll suggest that everybody links in with each other and takes the opportunity to connect when it makes sense. So thanks to everybody, from Scott to obviously John Lewis and all of you all who spent your time this 30 minutes. Hopefully been the smartest 30 minutes of your day. I guess you'll find that out later. Do you have a challenge that you'd like to bring forward into the SMA Spotlight? ? Send me a note. We'll collect folks in the network that makes sense for your problem. Also, we'll let you know to stay tuned. Our Learn from the Experts 002 is in 2 weeks. We've determined every 2 weeks is about the right cadence for this thing. And we're going to bring forward our next expert whose challenge is around switching from office to virtual teams, where he's going to test some of the proven ideas they have from the software industry to help. And he wants to